Okay, and with that, let's go into the 1-2-3 inning. So the first out, Tommy Pham. So this was an interesting little debacle that we saw over the weekend. He got into a skirmish this weekend, play at the plate, didn't take, he took exception to I guess some words or something from William Contreras, who, on a play at the plate. Tommy Pham, he's actually been fairly decent for the White Sox since he came over. He's been, I think, in a bit of a lull recently, but overall 280, 3 home runs, 12 RBIs. He's playing for a really terrible team. So he's, probably considered one of the more productive players in that lineup, which isn't really saying much. But Dolan, I'm going to let you have this one because this is what we're all looking for here.
Here's the thing about Tommy Pham. The question is not like, is he or can he be a productive player?
Yeah.
I think we all know that he can. Like, he's a decent big league hitter, big league outfielder. Like, he's a guy who is, in terms of on-field production, is worth having around. Yeah. There's also a reason that he's playing for the White Sox this year. And there's a reason that he didn't get signed until after the season started. It's because he's an asshole. Like, let's just call it what it is. The guy's an asshole. Like, he's, first of all, let's talk about the play that actually happened.
Yeah.
He's, moving, 5-6 feet in onto the grass, almost as if he's approaching home plate from the pitcher's mound and, like, seeking out contact. And then making this whole thing of like, oh, there was a physical play. I need to let everybody know how tough I am. And just like walking around the field, like, shadow boxing and saying, I'm going to fuck this guy up. I want to fuck this guy up. He don't want these fucking problems. It's like, dude, like, grow up, man. Seriously. Like, grow up. Enough. And then post game, he's in front of his locker and he's standing there with his, like, going like this on his beard, on his chin, acting like he's some tough guy. There's a reason why I do all this fighting in the offseason, because I'm prepared to fuck somebody up. Dude, like,
it's corny.
Nobody gives a shit. That's not what you're here for. You ever notice that every time Tommy Pham is, like, in the news, it has nothing to do with what he's doing on the field? It's all because he's creating an issue either with a fan or he's slapping Jock Peterson over something fantasy baseball related, or he's starting a fight on the field.
Yeah,
like, he's just an asshole. Like, teams don't want him in their clubhouse because he's an asshole, and he acts like an asshole on the field. And he, like, dude, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares that you think you're a tough guy.
Yeah.
Like, go fight in UFC, man. Right? Like, go do something where that's useful. Go learn how to skate and be an enforcer in hockey, man. Like, go do something else if that's what you're here for. It's just such a tired act. It reminds me a little bit of like Madison Bumgarner, the way he used to act on the mound, where it's like, dude, like you're good at what you do, but the constant bullshit is just so annoying. So I've just had enough of this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I don't think that you're alone in that sentiment. Tommy Pham's, it's worth pointing out at this point, right? Because you say grow up. He's 36 years old. You know what I mean? So he's been around the block for a long time. It'd be one thing, I think, if this was some 22-year-old, 23-year-old rookie or second-year player that, like, just doesn't, like, get it yet. But it's not. This guy's been around the league. I mean, how many? So Tommy Pham's been in the league for 11 years. So this is his 11th season in the major leagues, and it's his 8th major league team.
I wonder why. I wonder why. Like, it's funny. There were a lot of Dodger fans who were like, "Man, we need a right-handed outfielder." This is before the Dodgers signed Teoscar Hernandez, and I'm like, you can go sign Teoscar Hernandez, who's a delightful clubhouse presence and hits the cover off the ball against lefties, or you can go sign Tommy Pham, who's an asshole and hits the cover off the ball against lefties. Make your choice. Like, I mean, the other thing with him too, like when you start looking at, well, who's he been playing for, right? Like last year he's with the Mets and then with the Diamondbacks. He got traded at the deadline to a contender. Good for him. Before that he's with a not great Boston team. Before that he's with a bad Cincinnati team. Spends a couple years in San Diego. He's in you notice how he's not really. I mean, outside of last year, he's not really playing on World Series contending teams.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's just kind of not like, because teams that are at the very top aren't interested in his bullshit. And look, what's fascinating about it is like he's a guy that a team like the Braves could really use at this deadline. And so we'll see. Like is one of the legitimate contenders going to take a shot at picking him up, or will it be one of those fringe contenders? I'd bet it's a fringe contender.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because again, I think it brings up the interesting conversation of like how do you balance personality with production? And Tommy Pham, I think, kind of because when Tommy Pham's career started out, right, when he was in St. Louis, the Cardinals thought really, really highly of him, and they gave him, he gave them good reason to, but then pretty much after that, I mean. You're right. I mean, you were almost like forgetting that this guy was still in baseball at this point. And then he kind of remakes a name for himself last year in Arizona during the World Series run. And again, Tommy Pham was like, I mean, you can't really deny it, right? Like he was pretty big for them in that World Series run. He played really well in the postseason. Like Tommy Pham was really good for the Diamondbacks last year. And again, for the White Sox this year, again, he's no doubt a productive player, given how poor, how bad this team is, obviously, given the circumstances. But, I want to bring something up about Tommy Pham, which I thought was really funny, right? So, again, I live in New York. Everybody I know is a Mets fan. It's just the way I am. I live on Long Island, so most of Long Island are Mets fans, right? Because, again, Queens is closer to Long Island than New York City. And one of the guys, the big influencers in Mets culture is, of course, who? Frank the Tank, right?
I love Frank the Tank, by the
way. Frank the Tank is funny. I used to think he was a little bit sporadic and a little annoying, but now I kind of like him. It's pretty funny. But Frank the Tank is I think he's either at Citi Field or in Chicago. I forget exactly where it was. And he's having a conversation on the field with Tommy Pham. And he was talking to Tommy Pham about how because Tommy Pham last year, after he got traded from the Mets, was like, that locker room is terrible, right? Like you don't have leaders in that clubhouse. Like I forget what the exact words were, but he was just absolutely crapping on the Mets locker rothem, which
of course
it's probably warranted, but he was still doing it, right? So Frank the Tank is then saying to saying to Tommy Pham, he's like, I was really disappointed when you said that. And Tommy Pham, like almost immediately, like seemingly starts antagonizing Frank. And he's like, no, Tommy, like I'm upset because what you said was the truth. I'm not saying that like it just seems like that's why when I texted you earlier, I'm just like, it almost seems like he's finding reasons to get into skirmishes. Like I was surprised when a few years ago we saw that Tommy Pham and Jock Peterson got into a legitimate fight in the outfield before a game over something that was fantasy football related. And I was like it's over fantasy football? Like that's what it is?
Yeah. So here, two things, right? Number one, like Jock Peterson is a pretty tough guy to not get along with from everything that I've heard. Like if you're having beef with Jock Peterson, like it's so hard to take your side.
And I think you can make the argument. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think you can make the argument that Jock Peterson is the opposite of Tommy Pham, where Jock Peterson's not that good, but yet contending teams still like to roster him.
Yeah. I mean, Peterson's the guy that comes up with, he comes up with clutch hits, right? He's got great power against righties. Like, obviously he's a limited player, but he is what he is. And
but it's 210. Like it's insane.
but he's a guy that you'd rather have around than Tommy Pham because Tommy Pham's an asshole. Like that's the thing. Like I'm not at all disparaging Tommy Pham, the baseball player. Like he's fine. I think he's a solid piece to have on your team baseball wise. I just he's just the kind of guy that like he just seems like a miserable human being to be around. And I'm just so tired of like his shtick. Like it's just enough already, man.
Yeah. No, I think it's time. It seems a little high school for me, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's a little much.